Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I, Shivansh Mansal, co-founder at Law Community, welcome you all on Lawyers Speak. We have invited another amazing guest who is specialist in labor laws and industrial relations and is practicing advocate at Pune Labor and Industrial Courts and at Bombay High Court for the past 28 years. Sir has been associated with companies like Mercedes, Philips, Bridgestone, and many other corporations as advocates and labor management consultant. We welcome Sir to know more about his journey. So, sir, my first question is what factors influenced you to choose law as a career? How was your law school experience like?
Okay, there are many factors which really influenced me, to be very frank with you. Uh, by that time, I was already a BSc graduate and a graduate in geology, which has got really nothing to do with law. It so happened that in geology, it's all stones, and stones stay the same for millions of years unless there is some metamorphosis with the stones themselves. Well, leave the geology thing apart, but there was indeed a metamorphosis in me, and it dawned upon me that something which is ever changing should be a part of my life. And stones do not change. However, by that time, I was already a first class first in the University of Pune. But then there was a friend who advised me that do what you like, and then only you will enjoy it. And even if you fail, you have enjoyed it, and it's enjoyment that ultimately matters. So you should always love what you do. And then, I mean, law was to my liking because things change. I read something in the newspaper, yes, it affects my life. And this was one of the propelling forces which made me come to law. And I mean, in my family, I am the first generation lawyer. There was nobody earlier to me. So, in a way, it's also happened that I wanted to do something serious in life, something big in life. I don't know how far I have been able to achieve it, but this was my humble endeavor. As a student, I should not put it this way that I was a very, very bright student. In my, you will be surprised that throughout my schooling, I was a very average student. In matriculation, I secured 71%, which is not something which anybody could really brag of. 11th was all playing cricket here and there, and I was so engrossed in my sports or games, you can say, that I almost lost studying, ended up with having a 37% in an aggregate in my 11th standard. With 37%, you are to go nowhere in life. And then I still remember that whoever used to come to my house, friends, relatives, whether they were literates or illiterates, everybody gave me a dressing down for having secured 37%. And then the only solution was to change my college because I had many friends in the older one. Then I changed my college. To my surprise, I did secure 92% in the 12th standard, but lost my medical entrance with, I believe, a percent or two. Later, I turned up to science, and then I told you that I stood first class first in geology in the University of Pune. But then the see circumstances also determine your altitudes in life. I was fortunate to have good parents, educated parents. My father was my guiding source, and he guided me as to what I should be doing. And I really uh, followed each and every advice of his as though it was a sermon from the mount. And till today I never regret it. He guided me all the way. And then I told you I am the first generation lawyer. A bit of my circumstance was such that there was nothing to look forward with pride and nothing to look backward with hope. Or you can put it vice versa also, nothing to look forward with hope and nothing to look backward with pride. And then I still remember that I had joined an organization called Pune GCs, which more popularly today, the nomenclature is changed. It's Pune Junior Chamber. It's the Maharashtra Junior Chamber and the National Junior Chamber or the Indian Junior Chamber president, and then the JCs, that is the Junior Chamber, had a creed. It's like a prayer which used to recite before every meeting. And I still remember the last sentence of it. It said that economic justice can best be won by man through free enterprise. So, in order to excel at something in life, you ought to be free. And what can give me freedom? If I am into a job, that will not give me as movement and freedom which I enjoy it as being a lawyer. And all of these things, I will put it collectively, propelled me out to becoming a lawyer. Slowly and slowly, my thoughts got crystallized. And then a personal liking, something happens in the world reflected in the newspaper, reflects on my life. And all of these things put together made me go to a law college. And the law college which I entered was the Indian Law Society's Law College, which is an esteemed law college in Pune. It's a law college which would now be almost 95 years, I believe. And the law college was whatever I am, I would, of course, owe it to my law college. It has the largest library. I still remember I used to go to the library after my lectures and browse through as many periodicals, as many journals, as many, say, varied books on laws by different authors. Reading journals and articles gave me a different dimension in the sense that this author thinks about the same subject in a particular manner. Somebody thinks it in another manner. And then there were many competitions also at law college, and each and every competition I had been advised by my father at home that you have to be a part and parcel of every competition. And it's not whether you win or lose, that's not important. Participating is important. And he said that he gave me an example of the Australian Army. In the Australian Army, if at all they want to select you, they ask you a question, tell us something about yourself. And it's a natural tendency for people to brag about themselves that I have achieved this and that. But lastly, they ask you a question, how many times have you failed in life? And if at all you say, I have never failed in life, they don't select you because, in their opinion, you don't have an experience of handling failure. So, my father said that failure and success and handling both of them are equally important. And then my life became a series of successes also and failures also, and which it is today also. I will not claim I am successful all the while in all my cases, but then there is no failure as such in life. They are all learning experiences, I would say. So I'm yet to see a person who's really failed in life, including myself. I don't consider myself as one. I've learned a lot. Maybe things did not turn out in my favor, but yes, I have learned from them just to make myself a better lawyer and a better person the next time.
So, after graduation, how did you pursue your career in law, and what challenges did you face in the initial stage of your career?
After graduation, I mean law graduation, as I mentioned it to you, that I completed my geology then I joined a law college. Law also, it's said that when it's fluke one, then there is fluke two also. So the fluke one was geology first class first in the University of Pune, and then the fluke two was at law college, wherein again I secured a first class first. Simultaneously, I pursued my master's in business administration. I also completed my LLM with labor law and commercial laws as my optional subjects. And then came up a time, I still remember, I gave my last post graduation, that is LLM exam. And then I just uh, thought and pondered with myself that from today, yes, education formally is over. From tomorrow, what am I going to do? There is no teacher to scold me. And then I am in the open world and I want to be a lawyer. And as I told you, being the first generation lawyer, there was no background with me. And so I decided what is to be done. So there was a formula I had. The formula was 2 plus 1. So 2 years I will practice in law, extendable with a third year, and then gauge with myself as to how far well I am doing. Otherwise, it would be in the fitness of things that I pick up a job somewhere. So I started practice. In those days, I still remember earning was more important than henceforth learning because formal education was over. And I was fortunate to pick up a job at ILS Law College, and they did appoint me as a part-time visiting lecturer. A bit of the things which helped me were that earlier to that, I was already in London and had a humble experience of giving lectures at the London School of Economics, University of London, then School of Oriental and African Studies at London. I had all those certificates with me right from Dr. Ben Ehrlich, which I was proud to show Dr. Satyaranjan Sate, who was the then principal of the ILS Law College at Pune. And being a student of that college itself, they appointed me, rather, he appointed me at the law college. And even today, I'm pursuing my hobby of teaching law students for the past, I should say now, from June 88, that is for the past 32 years. So there are 32 batches of students, law students I have taught. And at my initial days, I mean, I used to go in the morning, 7:15 lectures used to begin till 10 o'clock. After 10 o'clock, what are you going to do? Then you are in law practice. And the initial days in law practice weren't that easy. And I did up a juniorship with some senior of mine. There was not one person, there were two or three of them. But then a juniorship in what? Because today is an age of specialization. And initially, I was into general practice, so a little bit of criminal law, a little bit of civil law, a little bit of family law, a little bit of conveyancing, and so on and so forth. But in the initial days, soon I dawned that there was not much learning with any of the people I was just roaming about. They did, I would not accuse them of having not taught me, but they were doing their bit. Either I could put it this way that I was a slow learner, or I was too much in a hurry, a young man in a hurry. And then one day I met a friend of mine who had just put in uh, an experience, I mean, a juniorship of 2 months. And I asked him, "What are you doing?" He said that, well, for him also, circumstances were as similar as me. And he said that earning is more important than learning. So he has left the juniorship and he is in the open market. In this world, you don't know who inspires whom, but he inspired me. And my friend, I should not be comparing myself with him in these terms, but then his academics were very poor. He was a third class all over. But he had one thing which was better than me, that is confidence. His confidence was roaring, and I got inspired by him. So, nothing worthwhile to do amongst all the juniors who were at my senior's place. It was like playing a football, wherein after say half an hour, the football just brushes your legs and then it travels to some other person. Such was the nature of the things which I learned. And that's why I said that it's better that I start something on my own and take up a plunge along with my friend who's already done it. So one day I went to my senior and I mean, made things clear to him. He was also quite understandable. Rather, once your guru remains always your guru, he is still my guru, I would say. And if at all I'm in a difficulty, I do consult him. And I went to the in the open market. Next day, I met this friend of mine. I still vividly remember that his experience is a couple of months, and my experience, including Sundays and holidays and everything, was 1 year, 1 month, and 12 days. And that was my experience in law. And we both were independent seniors, you can say, who have a juniorship of 1 month and 12 days. And I still remember we went to the canteen and I had a cup of tea in the court. And what am I to do further? No way. But then we started, we used to meet in the bar room every day. And my friend, there were a few more of them. They were quite enthusiastic. And in the bar room, they used to arrange different programs. And one day, I was a newcomer in the bar, so they said that we'll have a speech of Advocate Srikant Malegaonkar. Now, what was to be the speech? So there was no worthwhile topic. And then the topic they selected was Advocate Malegaonkar's experiences in London. And by that time, I had already delivered lectures at the London School of Economics and the University of London and all of those things, which I just mentioned it to you. And I gave up a speech, which I believe should be of 40 minutes. I don't know what happened, but then there were other litigants also who were in the bar room. One of them was quite impressed with me, and he said that there is a bail matter which you have to conduct. He thought that I am a big man because delivering a speech in front of so many advocates at the bar. And when he said that, yes, you have to get me a bail, I never understood what exactly I am to do because I was too raw at it. Then I took the help of this friend and that friend, and then ultimately we got the bail. I still remember he paid me 80 rupees, which I had to divide it amongst three of my friends. And this was the initial years of my practice. The first year, to be talking in economical terms, let me tell you, I earned 400 rupees in 1 year, which was enough for anybody, which was enough for anybody to get convinced that law is not my cup of tea and I should just be moving and wandering here and there and settle down into a worthwhile job. But then, as I told you, 2 plus 1 was my equation. So let me uh, do something. But in those days, let me tell you, I was a very voracious reader. I used to read management books. There was a book written by Edward D. Bono, the famous author. He wrote a book which was called as Tactics. And I got inspired by that book and I laid my foundations in law practice, making use of that book. And then there were many others also, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Then there was by Normal Vincent Peale, and then so on and so forth. And a friend of mine one day you always require a critic in the sense is you have good people and bad people, but then there are some who can screen you and find out what is really good and bad at you. And he told me I was good at telling jokes and all sorts of everything, right from plain jokes to non-veg jokes, and I had a very peculiar flair of citing them. And slowly and slowly I was a very popular storyteller amongst my friends. And one of my friend picked up this trait and he said that yes, you can be a good lawyer because you are a good storyteller. And he said that good, you are a lawyer. I mean, had you sat on the footpath and started selling ball pens, you could have sold the full lot. You are a good salesman. And then in those days, I was reading a book wherein, yes, what he was saying was quite right. Who is not a salesman? What is a teacher doing when he teaches in class? He's selling something. What does a politician do when he secures? He's trying to canvass for himself and secure votes. He is selling himself. What were you doing when you were wearing a new outfit and a beautiful T-shirt and a new branded goggle when you were trying to impress your girlfriend? What were you doing at that point of time? You are selling yourself. And this is not my thoughts; these are I have read somewhere. But I got carried away with all of these things, and then yes, today I would put it very humbly that a good lawyer has to be a good salesman. What is he doing? There are two parties. He's telling the judge a story that there are two parties. And one is come to me with some injustice. And there are some rules of the game which we call as law. And these are the rules of the game which he has not followed. And how I have followed them. So between me and him, I stand on a better footing. And that is the end of the story. And then I pray something. And then, yes, slowly and slowly, I really proved to be a good storyteller in court. But then I told you this was the initial days, 400 rupees per year. Next year, with all my selling gimmicks and marketing and whatever I had in my bag, the only investment I made was that I had printed visiting cards, 200 rupees. And whoever I meet, I made it a point, I would give him my visiting card. What it does with my visiting card is none of my business. People have even looked at my visiting card in admiration, looked at my degrees, this, that, whatever. Some have eaten bhel in front of me using my visiting card itself. But then one has to be emotionally very firm and not get carried away or not come under stress or not get subdued with all such sort of happenings. What is my part of my duty? My part of my duty is giving a visiting card. That's it. How he uses it. Some have even used my visiting card as a toothpick in front of me. But then that is for him. But this does not mean that I should not be giving visiting cards. And I made it a point not to give a visiting card to somebody again. I mean, the next time. I take a mental note of it. There's nothing written. If he asks say for it again, I will again give it. You'll be surprised over the years with whatever. Uh, by now, it should be some 12 lakhs of visiting cards I have floated in the market. It means I have met so many people in so many years. It's not. Rome is not built in a day. So it didn't happen in a day. Rather, it does not happen in a day. And moreover, let me tell you that it should not happen in a day also. Your practice should be increasing 10% every year. Just imagine if right on my first day, if all the cases in India were to be put in my bag, I would be having a stroke and I would die the next day because I'm not prepared for it. So it's a nerve building which is to be done day by day. Today, if somebody tells me that there is a strike in such and such a company, I say okay, because it's now I am seasoned, practiced, and my nerve is built to that. But if on the first day, if somebody tells me that there is a strike in such and such a company, and it's a multi-million company and they are all dependent on your advice, I would rather fall unconscious in my chair. So this nerve building is very important in the initial stages. Then the next year, I told you it was a general practice. Then with these cards floating in the market, it so happened that my friend and myself, we both we were partners because in a way we both were jobless, we both were briefless, and both had put in a long internship experience of almost 1.5 months. So we were quite similar in all our states. So what is to be done? One day he got a client who happened to be a panwala. And my friend was very rustic in his talks, and he had the flair to talk in the local language and use the vernacular in such a manner that the panwala got impressed with him and gave the brief to my friend, but not to me. And this really put me into some sort of a frustration. And I just started thinking and talking with myself that I have been to London and this and first class first and degrees and but a panwala was also not ready to give me a brief. What am I to do? But days went on and on and on. I slowly forgot about it. Till one day, we met some managing director in a court. And with, I don't know what happened is I started talking and the managing director was carried away by my talks. Next day, he called me. In those days, there were the mobiles. So there was a landline phone I had. He called me on the landline and said that when are we meeting? And I said, of course, sir, whenever you wish. So we decided a common place, and it crystallized that ultimately he made me his lawyer. I came home, started again thinking about the total episode, and I then told myself that maybe the Panwala is not impressed with me, but the managing director is. So you have your niche carved out. You should know your upbringing, what sort of a language you talk, what sort of a person you convey yourself through your language, and then who is impressed by it. And then it so happened when it was one managing director, I mean, such things are very infectious. Then I got another managing director and a third one. So slowly it started. Initially, I told you it was all anticipatory bails, and then it's a general practice. But to be very frank, I will really put it that every lawyer should go through the rigmarole of all such general practice. He should do something of civil law and criminal law and family law and this and that and have a hands on experience at everything. Because what happens is You, whatever is your specialization later, if you are having a fair knowledge of each and every branch of law, it really adds to your experience. It gives you a school of thought. It gives you a three-dimensional picture, how you should think about it. And it's thinking which is very important. In fact, I read a sentence that time, which really helped me, and that is thinking is hard work. I mean, I had even got it carved in my office. Thinking is hard work, and the for which the consultant and the lawyer has to work very hard. And then it started. So I told you, if at all I am to put it in monetary terms, I told you the first year was 400 rupees per year. Now I put it this way and asked myself that in the second year of my practice, if I were to be in a job at 400 rupees, what would be the rise I would get? 500, 600, double is 800. Four times, five times is 2000 rupees. How much will I get? Even nobody is going to give me a rise five times of the total income in my first year. God was great with all my marketing techniques and this and that and whatever. So I landed up from 400 rupees in the first year to 40,000 in the second year. Now this rise was a very exponential and a phenomenal growth. And I had an MBA degree to my credit, so I could analyze it in management terms. So what is my growth percentage? And as I told you, 2 plus 1 was my final formula. That is 2 years I'll practice, extendable with 1 year, and then make a gauge as to how I am going. First year was 400, second was 40,000, third year I came at 80,000. And yes, I decided if at all this is the growth rate, law practice has really got something to offer. There are some unseen things which I would be making a mistake if I don't tell you. In the initial days, yes, you have to slog a lot. Hard work. I will, of course, not frighten you by using hard work and this and that, and you have to burn the midnight oil, and there's no room. You will have to see a movie and this. No, no, no. It's not. See, if at all life is like roaming in a garden. If you have that mindset, then only you will excel. If you get buckled up and pressurized that what will happen in so many cases, and if at all even if I think it today, tomorrow, why tomorrow? Today should be the last day of my life if I'm to get down or get buckled under all that pressure. So life is a garden. Whatever is mine will come to me. Of course, I study also as though I am singing a prayer, or as though I am singing a film song. And then um, uh, I mean, it's the total building up. Then comes third year, fourth year. Then I got up a big industry, and that was Pune Zilla Parishad. And as for youngsters, let me tell you that you are not at dictating terms. Pune Zilla Parishad in those days had 120 cases, and they were to appoint a lawyer. And they did appoint me one day because, of course, I mean, there's no time. Otherwise, how I marketed and maneuvered the total thing so that I get up the briefs, that's also a different story. But I mean, to cut the long story short, and I got Pune Jilla Parishad 120 cases in one go. And how much are they to pay me? They said 1,000 rupees for all the cases put together on a monthly basis. And that was too frugal and too meager for any lawyer. Rather, it is demeaning. They said, this is a government department. If you want to take it, otherwise leave it. And as I told you, my total juniorship in those days was 1 month and 12 days. And then later here and there little bit. And I got Zilla Parishad. Zilla Parishad, all the cases, which I will say became my school. And I used to learn a lot. I read a lot. And this, what is doctrine of relation back, and what is doctrine of audio alteram partem, and what is nemo debet esse jude in propria causa. Slowly, I mean, and I was a very young lawyer, independent. You can call me a junior or a senior. Looks wise, I was a junior. Work wise, I was a senior. And I started arguing, and I had um, God was great. He gave me an opportunity to stand as an opponent in front of almost all the stalwart lawyers. in the bar. I did make mistakes, and all I would put it this way: all lawyers, for that instance, I'm yet to meet a lawyer or an advocate who is really bad at heart. Everybody is good. And most of the seniors, they did teach me that it is here you went wrong. You have to read this also. You have to read that also. And in a way, who taught me legal practice today is my seniors, my friends, and at last but not the least, my opponents. Hitler always said that in order to, if you have to grow yourself, you have to choose a formidable opponent. So if you get a good opponent, he'll make you run from pillar to post. And this is what exactly what my opponents have done. I am whatever today because of my opponents. And then they made me slog hard. They made me work hard. And then in those days, today everything is online. This generation is very lucky because you have an internet and a mobile and everything. A case law is at hand and a definition is at hand. In those days, you have to browse through books and books into libraries. Sometimes you have to purchase the books, and then you had never had the money to purchase the books. And it was a big life is. I heard in those days there was a speech I heard by Dada Vaswani, and he said that life does not travel in a rectilinear motion. There are always ups and downs. Life is a series of crests and troughs. Sometimes you will find yourself rising on the crest of success, and some next day you will be landing up in some trough, and then there's nobody to help you. But this is the way life looks at you. So, as youngsters, I will put it this way that you should not be much bothered as to what life is going to offer you. You have to do your best, and if you have given your best, that's the only thing you can do. Because you are, if you are falling short of your efforts, then you are going somewhere wrong. Don't slowly and slowly your mind will be accustomed to taking things in its stride and looking equally at success and failures. Both are equal. I told you there's no failure in life, there are only learning experiences. So that is very important. And then what challenges I faced in the initial stage? Yes, what these are all the challenges in the initial stage. You have no money. Incidentally, I never had an office in those days. And I still remember that somebody asked me, where is your office? And I had no office. So what should I do? Blame circumstances? Blame parents? What should I do? I had a friend, which we still are friends, and he looked at me and he said that always remember one thing: your office is where you stand and start talking with people. I thought he is pacifying me, but today I will say this is my advice to all youngsters. You are all fortunate to have good parents, good family, good education. So you should not be blaming anybody, because later everything comes in life, and which God did also. Luck changed. The only truth about luck is that it changes. Then I had a huge office and everything. But I still remember what my friend did tell me, that your office is where you stand and you start talking. Okay. So these are some of the nostalgic memories which I am sure every lawyer goes through this. Rather, I am writing a book now, which is almost completed. I thought to make use of the lockdown, and then the best way to make use of the lockdown was to write a book, which I have already written, and it's almost it should be over in a couple of days. And then soon, maybe after things are normalized in the market and this COVID recedes a bit, I'm going to publish it. And the name of the book is "You Too Can Be a Successful Lawyer." It's a 350 pages book. Nothing to brag about myself, but if at all, if somebody is to read the book, I mean, that's a treatise in itself. With all these experiences, in a short interview like this, I cannot speak more. But whatever are my ups and downs, and I mean, keep the personal thing aside, it's a universal application. What should be your attitude? What does punctuality mean? How should you greet clients? How should you smile? How should you talk on phone? Everything is there. That makes a person successful. So in the initial days, it was Jilla Parishad did give me 120 cases, but then what? What next? I don't know how to conduct a trial. And I still remember it was 27th of May, and then the Jilla Parishad clerks told me, come on, let's go to the court. And there were butterflies in my stomach. What am I to go in and do in the court? And I had a dual role to play. I was to pretend that I am a very learned lawyer in front of the Jilla Parishad clerks who are my clients. And I also had to hide my head in shame in front of the judge because I knew nothing. And slowly, but one thing I still remember, every day I used to come home, and in the afternoon, 3 hours and 4 hours and sometimes 5 years, I used to be continuously reading those files and studying the law as though I am going to appear for some exam. And it really helped me. Rather, this mental disposition helps me today also. One should be methodical. If at all you want to be successful, you have to be methodical. If you don't have a method in your working, and if all the picture before you is hazy, then you will be wandering here and there. I mean, that's not. You should be. And there was a story I read, which was written by Vinoba Bhave, wherein he says that even the sun, the stars, the moon, they run in with some discipline. So why should discipline be absent in your life? And then that really put me to a good discipline. Second is that uh, seize the day. You have to know yourself, what is your strength and your weakness and your opportunity and your threat, and the SWOT analysis has to be very ready. And know yourself. Some of my friends were nocturnal animals. Their offices begin at 9 o'clock and get shut down at 7 o'clock in the morning. I looked at myself. God has not made me this way. Sometimes the sleep element is more in me. I have to sleep at 10 o'clock. So what max I can do is, but I could be an early riser, which was difficult for all my friends. So I read up a book written by Robin Sharma, Join the 5 a.m. Club. It's recently written, but in those days it wasn't this way. But then I got carried away with all these things. And one thing is there, some people are in a habit of getting up, having lunch, then he'll have a small nap for half an hour, and the half an hour extends to 1 hour or 2 hours. And then again he'll get up. I never did all of these things. You have to make the most of the day. So you get up in the morning, you will only sleep at 10 o'clock at night. Until then, you should be just working. That's it. And what is work and what is rest? Rest is change of subject. If you are reading something and you get tired, no problem. Everybody gets tired. And then you change the subject, that becomes rest. And I heard something very beautiful, that a successful person and a lazy person. A lazy person wants to sleep in the wee hours of the morning and does not want to get up. A lazy person does not want to get up. A successful person also does not want to get up. Both do not want to get up. But the successful person, he just crushes, I would use the right word, he crushes his sentiments, thoughts, emotions, desires, whatever you can call, and gives himself a feeling that, yes, I have to get up. And then the sleep tells him that, no, you have to sleep now. And the lazy person succumbs to his sleep, whereas the successful person does not. And ultimately, he gets up and follows a routine, and a habit every day put together ultimately becomes a strong habit, and it's habits which make a person. So whatever is anybody, and I mean, it's everybody's example, whether you take Mahatma Gandhi or whether you take Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, everybody has gone the same way. So the thing is, you come out of your comfort zone. Success lies out of your comfort zone. Those who are dozing in their slumbers in the morning and those do not make, some engage their time in gossip, some look after some mindless TV serials. I would not put it this way that that is not important. Well, every sort of an education is important for a lawyer, but this is not the way day is to be navigated for those who want to be successful. Making use of every second is important, and this also includes wasting time. Remember, I heard what George Bernard Shaw said, that the time which you enjoy wasting is never wasted. So that is also a part of life. Otherwise, you will be a workaholic. So the balance has to be struck. So with all these things in the initial stages, when then there is no money, and somebody gave me a formula that in the initial stages of every lawyer, there is no money and much of hard work. Then comes up a stage where you get an equal amount of money and an equal amount of hard work. And then comes up a stage when you need not work and you get a lot of money. I myself, yet, I'm yet to see that day. So, well, but the endeavor should go on, which I'm doing it even today. So, the earlier stages of my career were not, it wasn't a rosy picture, because I'm the first generation lawyer. There was no office. I had to try to convince clients in my library and here and there and court corridors and everywhere. And then someday, I mean, God tests your grit, how much ability you have to endure all the odds, which possibly I feel God did. And then one day He gifted me a big office. Our house was built, and then we all shifted to our new house. And what is to be done with the older one? So the older one became an office, which today is one of the branch offices I have, because I sit in another office, and the old office is a branch office where all my staff sits. But then in those days, I started sitting there, and slowly, Rome is not built in a day. And there was something which I heard again, that your practice, the law practice, is like the moon. If it is not increasing, then it is decreasing. So the moon either increases its size or it decreases. So the law practice is like the moon. It's, if it's not increasing, then it's decreasing. To put it frankly, what has really helped me, see, whatever I'm telling you are all management thoughts. And the more a person is good at management, more good he is at law practice. I mean, this is my humble opinion. So, my MBA degree, in real terms, I'm not a manager in some company or something, but my MBA degree has helped me and is helping me even today. But then I have also inculcated an habit that all the while at the back of my mind, every day I'm very keen to reading all these things, new authors, say Robert Kiyosaki, and the Indian authors are also very beautiful. And moreover, I will say that there should be some spiritual book one should be reading. And I was fortunate enough, I mean, maybe because I have done some good deeds in my last birth, and then I was fortunate enough to read Ramdas Swami's Dasbodh. Ramdas Swami, Samarth Ramdas is the guru of Shivaji Maharaj. And he's written a book which is translated in almost, you can say, in all Indian languages. If you get hold of it, consider yourself lucky and fortunate. Uh, that which I read, that really, I mean, carved my career, I would say. What is good, what is bad. In our homes, we do not get a formal teaching as to what is right and what is wrong. And then in those days, I still remember I used to make one mistake every day. And then I wanted somebody to tell me that this is the way you should lead life. And then my mom was a teacher, and my father was also in a job, and they are having their jobs. They don't have time to teach you. So somebody has to do this, which was taught to me, or rather, he teaches me today through his book, which is written some 500 years ago. Okay.
So my next question is, what changes do you see in employment laws according to future prospect in India?
Employment law, which is my specialization today, there are many changes which are to happen. It so happened that on the eve of the Indian independence, we had Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who laid down the foundation of industrialized India. As you are aware, that Pandit Nehru was the first Prime Minister of India, and the Prime Minister is supposed to be the ex officio chairman of the Planning Commission of India. The first 5-year plans were laid down, and in those days, the sky was indeed very murky. There were no laws defined, and yet, on the one hand, India is, say, marching towards industrialization. There was a dichotomy in a school of thought between Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Mahatma Gandhi said that let's dissolve the Congress and let's go back to the cottages because India stays in cottages and in villages. Pandit Nehru had an aristocratic bent of mind. He was educated at the Harrow in London and stayed in Europe and was the father of a very rich man, that is Motilal Nehru, is known. But what is more important is that he had an aristocratic bent of mind. He said that if India wants to progress, it can only be through industrialization. So major plants and major projects were laid down: Nagarjun Sagar and Damodar Valley Corporation and Bhakra Nangal and Bharat Heavy Electric and Steel Authority of India, so many of them. Then a law was framed, that is the Industrial Disputes Act 1947. And then there were testing times. Women's education was made liberal. In 1947, there were hardly 5% women who were in the mainstream. Today, you can see them 50-50. And moreover, just to inform you as to the vision of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, see, Pakistan became independent on 14th of August 1947 and India became independent on 15th of August. Pakistan cannot manufacture a pin and India can manufacture a satellite. That is the difference. And everything in India is indigenous today. We manufacture everything in India. And this is because of the vision of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and his team in those days. And they were great visionaries, so many of them. And this is what we as a younger generation are reaping the fruits of what was sown in those times. But then there were some defects also. We had the Industrial Disputes Act in 1947 and the Factories Act in 1948. And then we had the mother document, that is the Constitution of India. And then many laws came up. And then the laws were that we had so many of them. Say 1952, we had the Provident Fund Act. We had, say 1965, the Bonus Act, and 1970 Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act. And every act to see the, it's not in one day it happens. You have to see what are the cases, what are the loopholes, what are the limitations the act offers. And moreover, I would say that India is also having a burgeoning population. Population of India, has it remained the same since 1947? We are at 136 crores. That is too big a population. And once we have this bigger population in India, there is a pressure on every institution of India. There's a pressure on courts also. So many people. I remember I had been to Israel and there were only 3 cases on board I saw. And I visited a court being a lawyer. In India, you go here, in one court, you will find 150 cases. Likewise, there are so many courts. Likewise, this is, I mean, there are so many courts. Say in a city like Pune, there are more than 60 courts. Or maybe, I mean, subject to correction, there could be more also. But then it so happened, then the law started feeling limitations. Say, for example, Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946. People become permanent in India. Now, this is a phenomenon which is absent in the United States of America, wherein there is a policy which is called as the laissez-faire policy, a hire and fire policy. All Indian laws are based on social justice itself. That is the largest good of the largest number of people. But then the limitations came up. And then today, does law cater to the common man? What about contract labor? Second is, do you really require contract labor? What is contract labor? Contract labor is marginal employment. Say I require 80% to work my industry, and then there are a few orders here and there. So I require 20 people more. So 20 could be contract labor. Do you know one thing? That India runs on contract labor today. So where is permanent employment and where is contractual employment? Now there are some areas wherein, say labor law is a number game. 0 to 10, there are no laws applicable. I mean, much labor laws. After 10, after 10, Payment of Gratuity Act 1972 comes into operation. ESI is applicable. After 20, Provident Fund Act 1952 is applicable. After 50, in state of Maharashtra, you are having the standing orders which are applicable. After 100, Chapter 5B of the Industrial Disputes Act is applicable. Now the threshold is 100. After 100, if you have to retrench or if you have to close down an industry and all of those things, you require government permissions. And how many permissions are granted since 1947? Very negligible. So there is a pressure from the employers that you increase this to 300, which was the original figure put forth in Chapter 5B in 1947 itself. So why not have it at 300? And then everybody will really be having the ease of doing business in letter and spirit. Now you go on the other side, that is the unions. Unions say, what are you talking? Is there exploitation? Answer is yes. Has exploitation ended in India? Again, the answer is no. Indian labor is exploited was an essay which my grandfather used to write. My father wrote an essay, Indian labor is exploited. In my college days, I also wrote an essay, why Indian labor is exploited. And my son is also writing an essay on the same topic. Why is Indian labor exploited? So the exploitation has prevailed over time. And that is why we see the advent of communism in so many countries. Now I am holding the brief, say for a moment, for the unions. Unions say this figure of Chapter 5B should be reduced to 50 only. Today it is 100, whereas the management say it should be 300. Now this is just one of them. And then managements also say we require fixed time employees. Fixed time employees, it is down the cards now. I mean, Parliament is seriously thinking of this. Then the code of wages is to be coming. Then there are going to be changes in the labor law. What we have done yesterday, minimum wages. And then what could be the minimum wages? And the minimum wages should be affordable also. On the one hand, cost of living index is increasing. Now you see the COVID-19, government has spent half of its treasury on treating the COVID patients themselves. And I have learned something that the cost of treating a patient comfortably is 1 lakh of rupees. From where are the people going to bring this amount of money? And how much time we have wasted, how many man hours are wasted. 90 days lockdown is not something which is tolerable for any economy. Plus India is dependent upon US and on Europe, who themselves are in problems. So this is really going to take a big toll as far as India is concerned, and everything is going to affect. So employers are saying that you are allowing us to work at 33% of the workforce, but with even if we start working at 33% of the workforce, can 33% of the workers give 33% of the output? No, output is 10% only, because you require a total force of 100, because there are so many interdependent factors. Likewise, running an industry is not all that simple itself. So employment laws have to be changed. They have to be a bit employer friendly also. At the same time, you cannot afford in a country like India to see that the rights of the employees are throttled. Just think, your father, for example, is into some job, and tomorrow morning they tell him that, okay, enough of it, you're no more in a job now, you're terminated. What would happen to you, your family? What about the equal monthly installments you are to pay because you have purchased a flat? How are you to pay the fees for school and college going children? Has anybody thought of it? So nobody can go this way. Of course, if everybody is to rely upon jobs for this instance, then that is also a recipe for failure. People have to go in for businesses also. Engineering colleges are open not because everybody is to get a job of an engineer. He is to start his own garage or a workshop also. So nobody is doing that. So there are many challenges which we have. The employment law has to cater. We are having the code of wages, which is soon going to be on the cards. Plus there are some more laws such as right to disconnect, which is already introduced in France, which is introduced now as a bill in the Indian Parliament. That you are paying me for 9 to 5 job. After 5, there'll be jammers in your company so that no email comes to me. You cannot call me also. This is right to disconnect. And at last but not the least, we are maintaining a population of 136 crores, which is too huge. I mean, I have got nothing against the system as such, but just imagine somebody is born on a railway platform, maybe a beggar. Yes, he too is entitled to fundamental rights. He too is entitled to everything. Though right to work is not a fundamental right. I mean, everybody has to satisfy his belly and have 2 square meals a day, every day. So how is that possible? So there are changes to be in labor law. Fixed term employments also be there. You are ready to sell your skill. So why should you be selling your skill at only minimum wages? You are entitled to more. If you have experience, still more. So all such brackets should be made available by the government. Sometimes I get a feeler that as to what ought to be the changes. Why do you require so much of litigation itself? Say, for example, payment of gratuity act, wherein now yeah, it's compulsory to have all people insured, and they have an insurance policy from the life insurance corporation. Can this be reduced? I mean, I am aware of the fact that everything cannot be reduced to a big zero. There are difficulties, but certainly the litigations can be minimized. Court litigations, court time which is involved. I mean, sometimes the procedural rigmarole is too huge. You can have standardized templates. Take foreign examples, how they do it. And there are many more things. Of course, the topic today is not how to delay court litigations, but truism is that many cases are in cold storage even today. And these are all government statistics. So we require good lawyers also. So employment laws on every count, there are going to be changes. Government is doing their bit. I will not undermine or I will not give less marks as far as the government is concerned. They are doing their bit. But then on the one hand, we are having a mental psyche. See, if my mind is conditioned with something for 60 years, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. You cannot teach me new things immediately. Just say this e-learning thing, how difficult it is for Indians because we are not used to it. So first you have to create a conducible climate, then make people understand winds of economy. Then you have to make things optional also. Then you have to adjust the laws also, make things easy for the employer also, protect the rights of the employees also. And this is indeed a balancing task. And that too holding, keeping in mind 136 crores of population in your mind. So they are doing it. It's like new laws would be coming, and it's like having a vaccine for coronavirus. First, what is to be tested is what are the side effects. And if the side effects are too heavy, then you will have to again make another amendment to see that some other law comes up. So this would go on. This is the way laws function. Otherwise, we would not have had so many amendments over the years. So things would be coming.
So, what advice or suggestions would you like to give to those professionals who have just started their career in law, or to law students who are still studying?
The law students who are still studying, basically, first is a very common thread which goes, and the common recipe for everybody is try to make carpe diem, that is, seize the day. Don't waste your time. Read something. Don't think whether this is useful for me or not useful for me. It's, in my humble opinion, knowledge never goes wasted. I remember I was arguing a matter as far as windmills were concerned. I was representing Maharashtra Energy Development Corporation agency, it's called. And there were windmills. One was in front of me, one is behind me, and you have to make electricity and sell it to the government. And there was some dispute as it. And while I was arguing the matter, the judge asked me a query. I asked the engineer, come on, show me the file. When I opened the file, there was a contour map. So I just had a glance at the contour map, and then I argued it before the judge that what the defendant was informing the court is a total lie. It's a bunch of white lies. Because His windmill is in a ditch, which is 15 meters deep. After the argument was over, the engineer started asking me, how did you know it? I said, I am a graduate in geology, which has got nothing to do with law. My geology knowledge came to my rescue because I knew how to read contour maps. And looking at the contour map, I mentioned it to the judge that the first windmill is on an elevation, whereas the second one is in a ditch, almost 15 meters deep. So the basis of the claim of the defendant was lost. And what helped me? So knowledge never goes in waste. So all law students, I mean, they should be, first is they should have a timetable. Now it's locked down. There's nobody to wake me up. So I can sleep and I have the luxury of sleeping till 10 o'clock in the morning. No. If your timetable, you should stick to it. I will not say get up at 4 o'clock, but at least 6 o'clock is comfortable timing. Have a good timetable made. Exercise is very important. Immunity is very important, especially with the COVID. You know how immunity is important in life. Then have, as per your timetable, meticulously follow it minute by minute. Success is measured, I heard somewhere, not in centimeters, but in millimeters. Both are almost good, but he is 1 millimeter better than the other one. So he is the winner. So this is what is to be seen. Then change subjects as you wish. First have a vision, discuss with somebody, speak with your friends, have a brainstorming. Even today in practice, if I have something, knowingly or unknowingly, what I do is I gather all my friends who are not related with law and put my problem in front of them. They give suggestions sometimes which are very funny also. But then there could be one suggestion which gives you a solution. The panacea of your dilemma lies in their thoughts. If I ask a lawyer, his mind is conditioned as to how lawyers think. So you should ask somebody who is not a lawyer only and discuss with everybody. In those days, I remember I used to make a chart and then I said, I will meet this person and that person. And I still remember I had asked for an appointment from the municipal commissioner of Pune Municipal Corporation. He was an IAS officer. And I said, sir, I don't know you and I'm having a problem. I think you could solve my problem. He said, who are you? I said, I'm a student. He thought for a while and he gave me an appointment. I said, sir, when should I come to your office? He said, no, you do one thing. Sunday afternoon, you come to my house at 11:30. I went to his house. Whatever was my problem, he explained it to me very nicely. And that is the day I mean, understood that there are good people all the way. In fact, to put it to you, I am yet to meet a bad person. People are good. And after, I mean, our talks took up almost, it was 1 o'clock. And I said, sir, thank you so much. You have given me a lot of your time. You are the municipal commissioner. And then I said, I'll be going home now. He said, where are you going? It's 1 o'clock. It's lunch time. We are having lunch. I had lunch with him. He's no more now. But then after that also, we were friends for a good deal of time. So there are good people on earth. You should make friends. And the best way of making a friend is being a friend. The more the friends you have, the more successful you are in life. The less the friends you are having, the less successful you are in life. And as I told you, I mean, you have to be a friend. You have to go out. You cannot be an introvert and be an expert in law. No, to be an extrovert. A wise man is a person who finds more opportunities than what he gets. If God has written 7 opportunities on my forehead, yes, I am going to get that. But how to convert 7 into 10 is my skill, for which friends are needed, good friends are needed. And you should not waste time. And there are so many time wasters in life. Gossip, then, poking your nose in somebody else's affairs, thinking ill of somebody is waste of time. Remember this. I mean, this is what I learned in the spiritual book which I just mentioned. So you should have a clear cut agenda in your mind, and then, I mean, slowly and slowly you are yourself navigating your way towards your success. This is what young generation should do. In fact, they are much more blessed, I would say. Today there is a webinar every alternate day, to an extent that there is a webinar fatigue now, they say. Fatigue is for whom? One who looks entertainment into that. You are not to look entertainment into the webinars. You are seeking knowledge. And for a knowledgeable person or one who wants to acquire knowledge, there is nothing which is called as fatigue. I mean, I felt pained at heart when somebody used this word that there is a webinar fatigue. No, there cannot be a webinar fatigue. So much of knowledge, and that too at your fingertips in your smartphone. And you are fortunate to have a smartphone. There are people who don't have it. So one should make the most use of it, make a methodical timetable. Even today, I mean, if I see some webinar, I take a decision whether I am to attend it or not. If I am to attend it, I again put it at some place on my cell phone itself as a reminder and make it a point to attend it. So the more you waste time, see, time is the only commodity which is equal for everybody, whether it is Bill Gates or Sultan of Brunei or you and me. Time is 24 hours. So how you make it is with yourself. So, I mean, there are many more things which in my book I told you, which would be soon coming, wherein I can hardly speak how much and what is required, what it takes to be successful. It's a big treatise. I mean, it's not that I'm promoting my book or something, but then, yes, it's a work of labor, I should say. I have worked hard for that only. I mean, I have written it in 3 months, but those 3 months came after 30 years.
How can an organization like Law Community prove beneficial to the legal fraternity? And what new avenues are expected from legal professionals such
Yeah.
as
First and foremost, let me congratulate Law Community itself. It's a very wonderful venture you are into in. And Law Community, you asked me as to how, I mean, how could it really help the law fraternity, if I am to reframe your question? So many ways. In fact, if you just have a crude comparison, I will say, I'm aware that comparison is a thing which makes a person happy or miserable, depending on whom you compare with. There are many existing players in the market. It's not. You have to take the good from everybody. You have to be receptive to new ideas. And then what are others doing? What services are they giving? Services is, I mean, they write articles. Some people are into software, then they produce case laws. Let me tell you, there is a big vacuum for one type of service which nobody is giving. If at all you can do it, and you can do it, law community, because your word itself, it's a community. So there would be a bunch of students, bunch of lawyers. So on the one hand, you should have a bunch of lawyers who would be registering with you or enrolling with your law community. And on the other hand, you have to put up a service that you will be doing a bit of your legal research also. Say I want a case law, whether remand home is an industry. I don't know. So I just type and send it to law community. Law community, on the other hand, there are thousands of lawyers who are already enrolled with you. Students are there. You can send it to the students whether remand home is an industry. The research goes at that end. Whatever is found by them gets stored in your data bank. I, as a fan of law community, I get my answer that yes, this is the judgment. This is a divisional bench judgment given by Justice so and so. And then it helps me in the court. And it also tempts me to ask you another question the next time. And this exchange goes on and on and on. In no time, you will be understanding, people will be looking at law community as something, as a problem solver. And it helps me save my effort also. Otherwise, if I tell you that, yes, I know what is your answer, and then this is a book, which is of 800 pages, read from top to bottom and you will get your answer. Nobody is going to read that book because everybody is equally lazy of reading 800 pages. So people are lazy today. People are, I mean, into some a speed also, and the speed has to be matched. If I waste so much of time, so that is why there are filters which are by so many of the software companies, right from Manupatra and LexisNexis and this and that. And but the filters, I mean, sometimes it's a machine. It may work, it may not work. But here, when we are dealing with humans, so you should be having a community which I mean, your name is Law Community. What is the community? Community is number of people. So you should have those people. And when they get enrolled, you should ask them that, are you ready for this sort of a venture? That is, are you ready to do a legal research? I'm sure for good things, no person says no. So this will be, and this is in addition to all the other features. So slowly and slowly, this is the quickest way wherein law community can really serve the community. And when you serve others, it is said that if I apply some, say, uh, and itra, it's called in Urdu. If I apply it in your hand, the scent, I mean, something remains on my fingertips also. So when you give somebody, it's not that you give it, it comes back to you. Yeah. So, I mean, that is one of the ways. There could be many more, but this is one of the ways which quickly came or struck my mind. Then is, I mean, there is some sort of a, you can help the government also. You asked me a question, what changes you see? Sometimes, let me tell you, as a young lawyer, I thought that Supreme Court should think this way. My friends ridiculed me that you think you are more than the Supreme Court. Supreme Court should think this way. And this should be the way, manner in which the law is to be laid down. To my surprise, after 10 years, full bench of the Supreme Court really overruled that divisional bench judgment and put forth a judgment which was suitable to my thinking. And I said, yes, I could also think it that way. So everybody has got a potential. In fact, I mean, I am much more proud of the younger generation because they are having the means, the tools, and moreover, with so much of a knowledge bombardment, they are much more intelligent than my generation. How the intelligence is to be used is very important. This is one aspect. Second is the younger generation has to be a bit work harder also. What they are doing is they are working smarter. You have to work hard and you have to work smart. Azim Premji said that the debate between them is over. In my generation, they worked hard but not smarter. This generation is working smarter but not harder. What is the effect? Almost the same. It should be both. So hard work never would be in out of fashion. It's never out of vogue, whether it's today or after millions of years. So all the while it will be there. And then there are some common parameters, punctuality, this, that, and the maintenance of psychology, positive outlook, that is important. You should always ever feel that whatever is you are doing is going to fetch you some good someday. You should never lose hope. Everything. And the world, the nature and all the natural forces will conspire together. I mean, conspire is the wrong word, but then they will all come together and help you achieve your objective. It's happened with me also many a times. The only thing is you should have something. And last but not the least, I will say that when you leave the world, I mean, this is too philosophic, but you should contribute something to the system. That's why I would like to congratulate law community because you are contributing. You're contributing something to the system. So you should contribute to the fraternity, the legal fraternity and law students. And then everybody, whatever you contribute, it helps everybody. So the world becomes a better place to stay tomorrow. It's become so easy. Otherwise, it's okay. My practice is also okay. Why should I write books? I had produced some TV serials. Why should I do it? What if others know it? If they don't know it, how do I lose? Or what do I gain? Are not the questions you should ask yourself. You are here to give something. And if you give something, it will I mean, God will return it to you in some or the other way, is my humble thinking. Which and there's one more book I have written, which after this one, both are ready. So I'm just waiting for this lockdown clearance and the COVID clearance a bit. And then that is simplified concepts in labor laws. The book is that any concept in labor law, if I tell you go and read 800 pages, then it's the end of the day. No. If you have 10 minutes at your disposal, you will get 90% grip of the subject along with the Supreme Court case laws also. That's the way in which it is written. Soon it would be in the market. That's also a 350 pages book. So, so it should be soon in the market. And this is what am I doing? Otherwise, I mean, I could have get up at 10 o'clock, waste the time, and then so it's not something which one should do. Is what again Samarth Ramdas Swami has taught me. That's why I did it. I mean, don't you feel that during the lockdown I never felt like sleeping late? I also felt it, but that's not the way youngsters should do it. I mean, you come out of your comfort zone, and whether if I mean whether anybody has seen your hard work as or not seen your hard work, God has certainly seen it. Is my belief. Right to belief is a fundamental right. So that's my belief. Somebody may disagree with me. I don't have anything to debate with him. But this is my belief. I may be wrong in the eyes of some. But this is my belief that the more you work, more you contribute, whether if not today, after 10 years, 20 years, someday a day would come. And then I told you in 11th, I had only 37% of marks. And one day I met my school principal and he was equally pleased to meet me. And I said I had a first class first at BSc and LLB and this and that. And he just looked at me and said that some flowers bloom later. So that struck my mind. So even if you are not good today, no problem. You have to start. When you start something, the commencement has a magic, is what Mahatma Gandhi said. And if you can see only 5 feet, that's more than enough. When you have to travel 5 feet, then again you will see 5 feet. And then you will go to the end of the journey. But who? One who starts. One who doesn't take the first step never went to any destination. So that courage is there. Do you think there are more intelligent lawyers or people are more intelligent outside? As a lawyer, I'll tell you. More intelligent people are not in courts of law. But if you see all these people who are outside, they look up at lawyers with great esteem when their work comes to a lawyer. Why? A lawyer has got only one thing, that is courage. Risk, no gain. I told you, I'm the first generation lawyer. 2 + 1 is equal to 3 was my equation. And if something goes wrong, crystallize down, circumstances, this, that. But then you have to take the plunge. And that's why I told you, nothing to look forward with hope and nothing to look backward with pride. And this is everybody's situation. It's not barring 1% who are super rich and who have got everything with them, then they need not practice also. This is whatever I told you, youngsters, you said, for this is for all youngsters who want to achieve something. It's not for all those born yogis who are contented with everything, whatever they have. No. I mean, that is a different spiritual plan and pedestal altogether. But this is not, you have to be ever, you have come here to fight with the situation. I mean, these are some of, I don't know, knowingly or unknowingly, I'm uttering sentences which are written in my book. The book is full of all such. How would you be successful? It's almost 350 pages, along with a message how you should read the book. Shakespeare said that some books are to be read, some are to be chewed, and some are to be digested. This book will require ruminating. You cannot read the book in one go. You have to read sip by sip. Then you will enjoy it. So that is the thing. And even, I mean, after reading it, even if one person is successful, I have contributed something. Is what is my humble endeavor.
Thank you so much, sir, for having such an amazing interaction with us. It will definitely gonna benefit a lot of young-minded people. We are
Thank you
glad
so much.
to have time with you, and law community is grateful for the same. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.